Hello. I am doing a reflection about the blended sort of self-paced lesson, not lesson, unit that David and I did with our geometry classes in trimester two. So it was the first time we'd ever tried it, and I would have been too chicken if David hadn't convinced me. And I'm really, really glad that he did. And so I've thought about it a ton, reflected on it a ton, and I've got made a lot of changes throughout the unit, and I feel like I learned a lot. And I definitely have some takeaways that I wanted to share out. I'd say 30% for you and probably 70% for myself so that I can hold myself accountable and push myself to do these sort of riskier things, riskier, I guess, in my book, things in the future. So first I wanted to just kind of explain the layout. So on my website, if I am at the geometry homework page, Unit 6 is the unit that we did the guided lesson in. So this is what the students saw, and I talked through it with them. I think it looks fairly overwhelming and intimidating, and this is what it ended up looking like, but there were a lot of changes made. So first thing up here, it says here's what we're learning in this chapter. So these are the learning standards. So we print these off for the kids every chapter, and we sort of use it as a checklist with them to decide where they're at. So these are the 5 standards, where they come from in the textbook, and then the learning targets for each one. So that they started with, so they could see what the expectations were and sort of self-assess as they go. But the guide, was probably the most important part of the whole process. So I printed one of these for each kid, and it explained what standard they were going to be learning, the process they were going to use to learn it, and then what practice was expected of them and what score they got. So then in this box right here, I required them to check in with me on every single standard so that we could have a face-to-face conversation, and I could give them feedback verbally, and then record any comments in this section. So this was sort of the go-to every day. Students grabbed their checklist, and it was a process of me meeting with them to fill in each of these boxes. So we had 3 learning standards, then a couple review options, and then we all assessed on the same day. And then the second half of the unit, the learning standards, there were only 2 standards, but there were 2 sections of the book, so we treated them as separate things, even though they all tied into the same standard. And then options for review, and then took the summative on the same day. So this document definitely evolved throughout it. And yeah, and this is the end product, which I'm looking forward to using next year. So what we did is for every learning standard, there is a video that they could watch, and it was just an EduCreations video. I'll hit
Hi
play.
everyone, hope you're doing well. This is a video to teach you standard 26.
So then we progressed through like we would.
The weird schedule. I actually gave you this exact problem.
So the key point I want to make in these videos is that I'm really, I felt really motivated to make sure that they were made by David or I. Like, I really wanted to get to use the vocabulary that we use. I wanted to use the same sort of teaching model. Like, I didn't want this unit to feel so different in that the explanations were varied from what they were used to also. So that's something I can mess with in the future. Like, I don't think I am the perfect person at explaining things, but I wanted to add some variety in this unit, but not change every single aspect of how they've been learning. So, yeah, so those were the videos. So the way class worked every day is students would come in and they either had to work on the learning part, which meant they used their own device, borrowed a device, had headphones, watched with a friend, that sort of thing. But they had to watch the video, and then once they were done, they could get going on the assignment. So for the assignment, our Big Ideas textbook allows them to submit homework online. So I said they could either do the online assignment, but it was these exact same problems, or they could do them on paper. And so they worked through them, and then once they were done, these are now live links like answer documents. So it's a link to the homework that I did and how I defended my answers. But when they were processing through this unit, these weren't live links then. I had QR codes in my classroom, and so once they finished an assignment, then they could come use the QR code to get a link to the homework. That was another change I made pretty early on, is I had these answer documents, and I tried to explain as much as I could in the homework answers, but really it needed some verbal explanation. So then I made online videos of myself going through the homework like I would in a regular classroom. What I tried to do on these was always write the problem number down on the screen before explaining it. So that, say I'm a student who got number 13 wrong. So say 13 is the only one I made a mistake on.
Hi everyone, this is homework.
I don't need to waste my time listening to an explanation on all of them. I can just scroll till I see number 13 written down. So then I could
So now we're going to jump to problem 13.
play through it like
Problem
that.
13, it's asking to find converse
So,
to the angle bisector theorem.
That
Because I can see that
was helpful. And so that was something that evolved throughout the unit. And then we added a bunch of extras. So David was key in coming up with these ideas. So there were puzzles for practice. There was a YouTube playlist. So if you click here, then it's a bunch of videos explaining specific concepts within the standard that were all pretty short. So you could watch just the part you were struggling with. And then challenge worksheets and all of that sort of thing. So one takeaway that I had was if students got an answer wrong on their homework, I didn't find them caring enough why they got it wrong. So it would just be, okay, I got number 29 wrong. So when I would check in with them and they would say, yeah, I got these 3 wrong, I would say, and what mistake did you make? And they weren't able to verbalize that. And I felt like that was a major loss. And it's something they were able to do in the past because we would have those verbal discussions on homework correction. So again, evolving throughout the unit, I made these watch links. So it says watch number 29 through 32. And so whether they got those problems right or wrong, there were explanations within that homework part that I wanted them to have to talk through and explain. So there were other ones, like if you scroll down here in standard 29, it says watch number 4 if wrong. So if you got number 4 wrong, I required you to watch the video. That one, if you got number 4 right, you didn't need to hear my explanation. But then other ones just say you have to watch. So even if you got the problem right, there was a teaching point that I didn't want students to miss out on from watching those. Okay, so then also there was a suggested calendar for students. So if they want to stay on pace in order to be ready to take the summative on a specific day, this was the pathway that they would take to get there. So that's sort of the layout of it. A few things I wanted to reflect on was first the role that I saw the teacher playing and the shift that had. So I felt exhausted after every class period in such a good, positive way. So I felt like I was running around all hour, checking in with kids, but those check-ins were really rich, valuable mathematical conversations, rather than quick, questions. And I thought that was really, really cool. I felt, like I said, exhausted, but motivated at the same time, which was a pretty cool feeling. And although certain conversations were repetitive, I I think when I do more direct instruction or teacher-led classes, I feel like, okay, I'm saying the same thing in third hour and as I am in fifth hour, and I'm tailoring it to the types of questions I'm getting, but really it feels like I kind of repeated myself twice. And for this, every hour felt so different because it was so specific to student conversations. So I loved the shift in what my role was as the teacher. It became more of just the feedback giver, and they were going through it as needed. Okay, so my sort of 4 major reflections are: one, that I didn't want to, like a hang up I had trying to avoid doing this type of teaching, was I didn't want to lose the opportunity to get to explain concepts to kids. I think that's like my favorite part of teaching. I think that's why I wanted to become a teacher, is because I really like explaining the why of a unit. And I thought, like, you know what, if I have them just learn it online, then I don't get to do that, which sounds really selfish, and I think it is. But that's feedback I get from students, is that they like my explanations. And so I felt like that I'd used as an excuse to not doing this in the past. So making the Educreations videos and still getting to be the one to explain it was sort of how I got myself over that self-made roadblock. A second thing is, I know that when I do this again in the future, which I'm for sure going to do, I want to sort of tweak those check-ins, because like I said, so many students were receiving the same feedback, that I think it's really important that that feedback was face-to-face and even one-on-one. I think if it had been me talking to 3 students who had the same issue, it still wouldn't have been as valuable. I think the students felt more connected to the feedback because I was giving it to them personally, verbally, instead of just writing it on their paper. And so I think that part was important, but I think I need to change that, because I wasn't getting enough students check-ins done in an hour. So the biggest way I've thought about overcoming that is these watch videos, like how I'm requiring them to watch, so that when I meet with them, they are ready to explain to me, here is the error that I made. And that, I think, would be really helpful moving forward, and just spending more time anticipating which of those homework questions I want to require of them, rather than waiting to see which ones they struggle with and then requiring them to watch the videos. Okay, that was my third one too, is require the homework videos. And then my biggest takeaway was just how much students appreciated this, and how much students appreciated being done with this. So I cannot figure out the profile of a student who liked the blended unit, because some of my very highest achieving kids loved it, whereas other of my highest kids were looking forward to being done with this unit. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then same thing, kids who have struggled with the typical classroom, some of them thrived in this sort of blended learning opportunity, and some of them continued the same negative habits that they'd had. So the key that I'm taking away is that variety is what matters. So there is no specific profile of a kid who prefers this over anything else. And all that matters is that every kid has an opportunity to learn, and that I am tailor-making things so that every kid has sort of a high point of the year. And so this is another tool and another option and another variety for how I can reach all learners, instead of just teaching sort of in the same style the whole year. So I'm excited to do more of it. I think that they benefited from it. I think selfishly I benefited from it. And I think that it went shockingly well for the first one ever. But I'm excited to do more of them, because I think that I have a lot of new ideas for how to make it even better. So, yeah, yay for being brave, in my opinion. Even though it's probably not brave to others, it felt like a big step for me, and the fact that it was so positive was really motivating. So, there you go.